Okay then. And FILMBuFF looks on and observes keenly. Oh, she needs a break. He's noticed as well though. But see, the key here is that the type of, I don't know, is that the type of outcome the king can accept, right? Could he feel that it's tainted if he gets one over her in this state? Clearly, you know, exhausted. That's a big deal as well though. But I think it's a bit more than that as well though. Go on. Because yeah, he's beginning to care about her. That's, you know, that's the thing that's been concerning him, and her influence. Ooh. There's more to it though. He caught on to it as well. That might end up happening anyways, right? Good chance of it. He's so dramatic, I love it. There you go, there you go. Get it out. I love this guy. Manchester Yuppie's like, the hell? Ooh, okay. Yes! Okay. From beyond Pito's end. Let's put a pin in that. Yeah, spot on. She understood the stakes. Oh, look at this. He knows it. I like this approach by Killua, direct. Let's see how they address that palm situation. Oh, look at this. Engaging in dialogue. Look at this. He's so open to this. Ah. He's struggling on the inside, man. And it's glorious, isn't it? Yeah, look at that. Oh. He's got a lot of concern right now, man. Yeah, he knows. He knows at this point. Iron sharpens iron, eh? Okay. That's out there. She must be impressed. Ooh. She's got to be impressed. She's impressed. First he walks in on FILMBuFF and now her. Ah, see, they don't know the unknown though. The girl. See, Killua's thinking about it. Ooh. You're on the right track, Killua. That's a great shot. He's actually excited about the potential, isn't he? Look at that. Whoa. That's a beautiful shot as well, isn't it? Look at that. Oh, this is the actual moment then. Even better. How about that? Yeah, that's her Nen. And does that excite you? I think it does. Oh. Komugi. Komugi, okay. No. She's gonna ask him his name. Oh my god. Look at that, treating him like a person. The individual behind the title, right? Oh boy, oh boy. Speaking of names, right? Ah. Oh. Let's see how they handle this.
王は王です。それ以外の何者でもなく、唯一無二の存在。今は様々なまがい者がその名を無断で使っていますが、
That name.
排除、抹殺いたします。王といえば、世界中の誰も
Only one king, one true king, eh? It's interesting that he called it a name. King is a title, right? Look at the framing there.
私には2が勝ちすぎる問題。
Hey man, fair enough. That's a good answer. Look at this, the empathetic Neferpito. Compassionate. Interesting. This is... He didn't like it though, did he? Oh. Komugi. Oh, that's right. That's right. But a master of that craft, of that field. Oh. Yeah, you know, he's in tune with people's feelings, isn't he? He did. Oh my god. He's regretting it. Oh, I just got chills. Oh my god. This is insane right now. Oh. Is this dude gaslighting himself right now? He is, I think he is. He's almost at breakthrough, but his mind didn't allow it almost. Yeah, he's coping, man.
護衛軍失格です。
なんで？
見当違いの誤解で先走り、
No,
危うく王を侮辱するところでした。
he was on the right track.
王が自分の行いを悔いているのではないかなどとバカなことを考えて。
He's beginning to.
お前はいつも深読みしすぎなんだよ。
それだけのこと。
うん。
He agonizes.
確かにあの子が来てから王は少し変わったにゃ。
ええ、それは事実。
王にとって邪魔ならあの小娘やればいいじゃねえか。
私があなたと同じ思考レベルだったな。
But interesting that Pito didn't mention anything about killing her, right?
世の力こそがこの世の
Yeah, this is him just trying to
他の脆弱な強さなど世の前
reassure himself. He's gaslighting himself. I believe that at this point, that's not something he could do. Okay, this bird. Eagle or hawk? Is it the same one? Oh, look at that. Instinct.
ありがとうございます。
なぜ助けを呼ばれ
She just took it in silence.
ここもこっちも血だらけではないかくそなんというなんと脆い生き物なのだ
Yet. So impressive.
ですからご迷惑をおかけしてはいけないと。
迷惑なことなど何も
Look at this.
世は一体貴様は大事な客だ何を言っている
That's right. That's right.
今こいつを殺しに来たのではないのか
This is true character. Shining through actions.
なぜ泣く
It means a lot to her, doesn't it? He is perplexed right now, man.
この生き物は世はこいつをどうしたいのだ
Okay, beautiful stuff, man. The deconstruction phase is upon us, right? A state of disunity, a full-blown identity crisis. Okay, so, before I actually get into the episode, I did end up going back to the title of the episode. And, her name's right there. So it makes sense that, I was asked to, try and skip the title, and I did. And yeah, it's a great scene. It's a great scene. And it's a big moment, not only for this episode, but this arc and, Meruem's character arc specifically as well, right? Because, Komugi getting that name and him even thinking to ask the name, even though he thought at first, a foolish question. But yeah, that right there's a catalyst because the things that happened right after that, her having the courage and, also beyond courage, just feeling that, okay, maybe I can ask this, right? Yeah, she's still a little bit, hesitant, but still she felt comfortable enough that she could, at least ask it at this point, right? And that right there is really quite indicative of just, that relationship. The dialogue that's kind of taking place now is just kind of like night and day at this point, isn't it? He's so open to actually listening to her, right? Because he understands that this is a master of her craft. And, it almost feels like she's just getting started, given that she's awakened at this point, right? So, I felt that he's actually excited about that prospect, that she can get so much better. And then, you're getting that internal monologue of, I'm actually enjoying this, right? This is, I believe, the second time, maybe the third time he's actually, stated this. Perhaps not out loud, but, he's stating it to us, the audience, certainly. But yeah, her asking the name, that is, you can see it almost happen a split second before she asked it, right? Because it's just, going into that direction. It's heading into that direction, right? It's an immediate follow-up to his question. So I just kind of clocked, oh my God, she's going to ask a name, right? Or ask his name. But, before I actually get into that and everything else, of course, actually, let me just kind of establish that this right here is one of the standout episodes. I feel like I've been saying it recently quite a bit, but this is truly a significant episode, a turning point episode. And really, really quite a significant episode for the, the Chimera Ant arc as a whole, and then Meruem's character arc as well, specifically. But, in addition to that, the circle of supporting cast around him, right? His royal guards. I just enjoyed that so much, right? The dynamic at play between the royal guards and Meruem, and then of course, let's not forget Komugi as well, right? Those 5 characters in that palace, it's fascinating to gain insight and kind of check in on their conversations. Listen, FILMBuFF, fascinating character. I mean, he might be the most fascinating at this point out of the 3 royal guards. He's not simple like Montotuyupi. And listen, I don't say simple as in, uninteresting. I'm sure Montotuyupi is going to get his time in the spotlight. I'm sure of it. It'll happen. And I'm sure, I'll get to learn quite a bit about Montotuyupi beyond the things I know at this point. And of course, I immediately took to Neferpito as well since her first appearance. But, FILMBuFF is, like I said, he's a fascinating one, isn't he? Right? Especially how much his own identity is tied to the king's identity, right? The king being the key word here. It's essentially intrinsically linked to his own identity, right? Serving the one king, his ideal version of a king, not the person, not the individual behind the title, but the king, the title itself. I'll dive into it a little bit later because, there's a whole segment that I really want to focus on here. Him approaching the 3 royal guards about his name, right? And of course, names and identity kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, he's got this idealized, version of a king in his mind, right? The things that are appropriate for a king and all of that. I'll get into it. I'm really quite excited to talk about this. Listen, man, this is the type of episode, right, that reminds you, why exactly a lot of us love storytelling. Why a lot of us gravitate to this kind of stuff, this kind of character work, right? It's oh my God, it's a beautiful episode, beautifully written episode, isn't it? I'm sure many have said it before me, but listen, it was my first experience, and I've got to say it, that was beautifully written. And at this point, I don't think it's a far-fetched idea to say or to claim that perhaps the stuff that's kind of going on inside of the palace already is some of the most exciting, some of the most intriguing and fascinating, captivating stuff at play at this point in this arc, right? You've got Meruem, you've got the 3 guards. Now in this episode, like I said, specifically, you get a lot on the 3 guards, right? All of a sudden, I get this really, interesting and exciting, update, through the insight they provide to the king. Really distinct responses at that. The individuality is most definitely at play. But yeah, let's kind of focus on that incredible ending, right? Both Meruem and I are just, like I said, perplexed, right? He is legitimately just so shocked at his behavior. But listen, at the end of the day, true character shines through in these types of moments, right? Yes, he's, pumping himself up before entering that room, right? Reiterating to himself that, I am the almighty king, the almighty being, right? Brute force is the greatest force in the world, right? And of course, this kind of begins right at the edge of that, breakthrough almost. It's happening in his mind already, but, you see that, FILMBuFF is just, he's just on edge, just really, really hoping that the king doesn't actually, voice it. Right, he can sense it, he can feel it. He's got that thing, the ability, right, kind of being in tune with people's feelings. Not quite mind reading, right, but he knows he's kind of in tune. Even beyond that, he's been there, right? He's been observing, and he knows that this girl Komugi has had so much influence on the king already, right? It's in his subtle reactions to these things. That you see the anguish, the internal conflict that's going on within FILMBuFF as well. He's like a tortured soul, man. At times it feels so dramatic, right? So I can't help but chuckle, but, I'm really quite dialed in to, how he's kind of trying to handle this, right? And approaching it. And, gaining those insights. It just feels like this, treasure trove, doesn't it? And listen, I said a few episodes ago, there's this idea, maybe this notion of someone like FILMBuFF, actually believing that, he maybe has a responsibility, a duty to actually maybe protect the king from himself, right? In a situation like this. Listen, before I go any further, let's kind of put something out there. At this point, I don't think that, he could possibly betray the king. That's just not a thought that occurred to me at all, right? I think loyalty to the king is absolute, right? Across the three. Montetuyupi, Neferpito most definitely, and then of course FILMBuFF as well. But again, that being said, even though loyalty is absolute, right, to the king, loyalty towards Neferpito and Montetuyupi, maybe that's a different conversation, perhaps, right? Especially once things really kind of take off, and our other group that's pretty close at this point, reveals themselves. And it's meant to be quite a shock to the system, right? Because they are, as of this point, that is the plan. They are going to just appear out of thin air, right? To take them by surprise again, or of course, rather. Now, listen, plans can be good. It's good to have a plan, a concrete plan even, but things happen in the field, man, especially if you have unknowns like Komugi and her influence, her impact on the king, and him not ever really even going back to the throne room on the 3rd floor, or at least not all that much. He spends most of his time in that other room, right? Playing Gungi. So, they don't know about this, right? But again, there's unknowns on both sides. Right? Hell, even for me, there's a bit of an unknown in the chairman's approach, right? And his, assistance and all of that. Again, it's a long running, belief at this point that, it is most likely about to be Zeno, right? Given some of the more concrete, bit of insights that I got a few episodes ago about him actually being here before, infiltrating before, and all of that. But even beyond the whole, Komugi and her influence on the king unknown, there's other unknowns. Things can happen in a split second, like Melioran said, right? Even if you slip up for a factor of a second, it's done. You're toast, right? The stakes are that high. And, I feel like something like that could happen. And, I think there's a really high chance of something like that happening, right? Not everything's about to go to plan. Of course not, right? So, even though it's good to have a plan in place, they'll probably have to rip up those plans at some point, right? And kind of go with the flow, assess the situation in the field as things are playing out, as the operation is playing out, and then, perhaps approach it from a different angle, right? At a moment's notice, perhaps, right? So, of course, that's on the horizon. That's the thought of that is exciting, of course. But, the thing is, right now, by the end of this episode, like I said, I got one of the best episodes of the arc, and the things that are at play now, right? The relationships, just in that palace already. My God, it's just captivating stuff, isn't it? But again, let's kind of focus on the ending there. But isn't it fascinating that in the process of approaching that door, he's kind of building it up and telling himself, okay, this is it, right? I can do it. The next time I see her, beyond that door, I'll just do it. I'll kill her in an instant, right? Because that's all it's going to take. But then something really incredible happens on the other side of that door. He sees her in danger, right? In the process of an attack by that bird. And it looks to be an eagle. Now, listen, I'm not sure if it is the same eagle that unfortunately kind of flew into Netero, the chairman's aura that he was expelling at that point, right? Or maybe a bit of a far-fetched theory, but theories are fun. Maybe it is, perhaps his eye in the sky and all of that, right? Again, I don't know if it's the same one, but it's notable that once again they've shown me this bird, right, an eagle, now approaching the palace. But the thing to note here is that the trajectory is changed because it ran into the chairman's aura, and now that bird ended up at the palace. And then once again, it's blasted by another immense aura, right? Output of aura, right? And it's Meruem's Ned. And yeah, just like the royal guards felt, it's full of that, malicious intent, that bloodlust, perhaps. Again, I firmly believe he's gaslighting himself at that point, but that aura, the malicious intent in that aura, it's still a thing, right? It's a legitimate thing. And you see the bird immediately just takes off once again. So, maybe there's residual, I don't know, effects of that aura that kind of made that bird, the eagle, go a little bit crazy on the first person it came across. And that happened to be Komugi. But going back to the other side of that door and Komugi actually getting attacked by that eagle and her just taking it in silence because she just didn't want to disrupt anything. She didn't want to bother anyone, right? Because it's so early in the day. My God, I mean, she's just so incredibly precious, isn't she? So kind and respectful. Even given her really tough life, right? Though of course, that does build character as well. Now, see, the thing is, you can explain someone's character. You can have other people's opinions on someone's character. You can have the character itself, right, reiterate their beliefs and their own character. But to see the authentic nature, to see the true character shine through, it's in a moment like this, right? His immediate instinct, is to protect her, to look out for her, to save her from this attack, right? He's in a state of, not in a state of panic, but he's really quite concerned for her safety, right? He is. And then of course, after this, he's in a bit of shock himself as well, right? Because he's almost not, recognizing the actions that are taking place, right? That he's actually capable of. But that incident right there just reiterates that, okay, there is something about this person. I do care for this person. He does care for this person quite a bit. I think I'm looking at a textbook case of, a contradiction between characterization and true nature, right? It's taken that approach here. But yeah, like I said, he's in a state of disunity at this point, right? He's got a lot of introspection ahead of him, right? And that's exciting. That's really, really damn exciting, isn't it? But yeah, at this point, effectively being in the deconstruction phase, it's truly on the path to uncovering and finding his true self, right? His core essence, his authentic nature. And again, that authentic nature does shine through under pressure. But yeah, even though, his mind almost kind of tries to revert back to his inauthentic existence, almost immediately he's reminded of, okay, there's a lot of change happening within at this point, right? And I have to come to terms with it, right? I have to try to understand it. But it's at that point now, isn't it? The king is now actively caring about someone else's needs before his own, right? This incident is quite an illuminating one for Meruem, isn't it? And at this point, the universal experience of self-discovery and personal growth is certainly at play, right? It's a full-blown identity crisis. It just is. And like I said, it truly feels like it's about to be one-way traffic from this point on. And you see that, his memories and his actions are kind of coming to the fore as well since meeting her. Right. And, just in general, memories and past actions are constantly being rewritten or reassessed, right? As people or characters, in this case, reinterpret past events, right, in light of newfound understanding and perspective, right? And he is applying that now, right? And again, there's that incredible moment as he is thinking back to his actions, right? And he is reassessing those actions, and he is about to show regret, right? Listen, he doesn't actually have to say it, right? Like I said, FILMBuFF most definitely did not want him to actually voice it, but us, the audience, knows he regrets all of that at this point. He's seen the potential in Komugi. I mean, that was the existing potential and strength she already had. Now she's awakened as well, so there's that aspect of it as well, right? Listen, at this point, it most definitely seems like he's never going to beat her at Gungi. I just don't think that's about to happen because, like I said a few episodes ago, it's not just a one-sided thing, right? Because she actually came across such a sharp competitor in King Meruem, she's actively improving as well, right? She's getting sharper as well. And again, who noticed? FILMBuFF. He notices everything. He just does. And, these fine details that he's able to pick up, right? It's kind of like a curse as well, because again, internally, there's quite a bit of anguish and, conflict. At this point, Meruem's narrative identity and his lived experience are quite a contrast, right? And it's disorienting, isn't it? And it's causing a lot of confusion for him. And of course, in extension, someone like FILMBuFF again, who's so intrinsically linked, or whose identity or self-worth is so intrinsically linked to serving the one true king, that perfect being. But yeah, going back to Meruem, at this point, he's beginning the process of struggling to reconcile his self-concept with, the reality of his experiences. So yeah, it's really quite exciting because, there's about to be a lot of, reflection or introspection, right? Self-awareness. And also, in an identity crisis, external support is most definitely a thing, isn't it? Right? It can be really quite an important thing. And you see that, the support of the royal guards is certainly at play as well, right? He reached out. He wanted to talk to them. He wanted their opinion on this. And yes, of course, support can be really quite important, right? Insight, gaining insight and, getting other people's input in, this type of, crisis, identity crisis. It can be really quite helpful. It can, but, ultimately, King Meruem, or, the king without a name at this point, he's going to have to know for himself. He's going to have to decide for himself. And he knows it. He's already on that path. It's not that big of a mystery to him at this point. It's more so about trying to, truly kind of understand it. And yeah, it's just a really exciting thought that he's on that path now, right? On the path towards enabling clarity and emotional stability, right? But, again, on the horizon is also that encounter, right? Yes, of course, there's, one aspect of the extermination squad, but, his nemesis is essentially going to be the chairman. And then, of course, a nemesis archetype can also bring out all kinds of other characteristics as well, right? At this point, they've made it really quite clear that he'll protect Komugi, right? So, there's that factor at play as well now. Once all of it kind of gets crazy, it's all taken off, he's going to have that on his mind as well, right? This is not something that the guards kind of planned for, right? But they'll have to go with the flow, right? Because that is a priority as well at this point, an important guest, right? And now, you begin to think about some of the possibilities, some of the outcomes, the connotations, right? If she is to be harmed, or if the chairman, imagine the chairman does kind of figure out, hell, he might have already figured out, though that feels like a bit of a far-fetched theory that I might kind of touch up on again, the eagle and all of that. But, like I said a few episodes ago, the chairman could exploit the king's nature, Meruem's nature, but to quickly touch up on the eagle and all of that, and the slim possibility of that possibly being, the chairman's eye in the sky. I mean, I feel like after this episode, it feels a bit more unlikely, much more unlikely actually, but yeah, there was that idea in my mind that, okay, maybe through this eagle, maybe he is able to kind of keep a track of things, though, as I'm saying that, it's quite clear that eagle randomly shows up, right? Randomly kind of flies into that zone of him expelling his aura. But, I don't know. It's not something I can completely just kind of, chalk off at this point as something a bit too far-fetched. It is up there, but, let's put a pin in it and let's see if there's anything else there. But, hypothetically, if you do kind of stay on that track and, maybe the chairman does have some active influence over this creature, this bird, again, it has to be stated, this is just speculation. This is just a hypothetical, if that is the case, then okay, him attacking Komugi could be a test, right? To see how the king might react, right? But again, it's a bit far-fetched because he doesn't know that, Komugi has had this kind of an influence on Meruem. So, again, it's kind of like once you start thinking about it, once you kind of, talk it out, then it's like, okay, it's even more unlikely, but speaking of that support, let's kind of look at one of the standout moments of this episode, right? This scene right here is one of my favorites of the arc so far, easily, right? And I'm speaking of him summoning all three of his royal guards and asking them, right, about his name, his identity, essentially, right? And, there's a really interesting moment there as he calls upon Poof once again, right? And then he goes, Poof, that's right. He just kind of, just now after, kind of having that idea put into his mind, the notion of a name, right? The person rather than the title of king that he's born into, you see that now it's kind of registering, of course he remembers the name itself, but now he understands, or he's giving it a little bit more importance. He's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Poof. Yeah, you're the one that's called Poof, right? Because that's your name. But yeah, he asked the question, didn't he? And, the responses I got here are so intriguing, right? And I think, it's really quite exciting because, this scene right here and, really kind of gaining this insight from the three royal guards, I think this can be applied to things to come, right? That I am going to see, their individuality at play. That's an expectation anyways, but, seeing this scene really, it's just really quite exciting in how they approach it. Of course, I touched up on FILMBuFF, so let's kind of, get back to FILMBuFF here. Like I said, he's got quite an idealized version of the king in his head, and he really wants to protect that image, right? Because again, it's so intrinsically linked to his own, identity and self-worth, isn't it? And, names don't even come into the equation, but, there's an interesting thing here. He kind of approaches it as, the king being the name. But then, of course, almost immediately, Meruem lets him know, okay, listen, that's a title that can be bestowed upon anyone, right? Anyone that's worthy, I suppose. But, at the end of the day, it's a title. It's not a name. And that spark that was lit inside of that room, just by a simple question, right? Supreme Leader, what is your name? You see that it just had this domino effect. I mean, it's a bit of a funny thing to kind of think of, but, it appears that FILMBuFF actually does, want the king to be someone like Perfect Cell, right? The perfect being and just that, right? No names, there's no other equals. And then you have Montuta Yupi's input, and his input is actually really quite, specific, isn't it? I am not equipped to answer this, essentially, just being really quite honest on the matter, right? That, listen, I do not have an answer for you. I'm not in a position to give you an answer for something like this. And then there's Neferpito's insight. And this right here is one of the really surprising elements of this scene, because you see here that, perhaps, there's been development for Neferpito in the background though, or, it's just something that hasn't been focused on up until this point. She has empathy. She does, right? She focuses on the king's feelings on the matter, right? And, doing what feels right. And, doing what feels best for you. You see that unlike FILMBuFF, she's not concerned with the image aspect of it, right? Upholding that image or that role, playing that role perfectly, as it's meant to be, as he was born into it, right? That was already laid out for him. She's not about that. And, the thing is, she also understands that, okay, the king has changed, that, this girl has had an influence over the king, but she's okay with it. She's all about going with the flow, right? She didn't even say anything about, potentially harming or killing the girl, right? If she is going to be or continue being a speed bump, right? She didn't even think of it, right? Of course, Montuta Yupi floats that idea. And then, of course, you've got FILMBuFF, who at this point is thinking, oh my God, I'm on the same level as Montuta Yupi, right? Like, same thought process. I've got to say, there's a lot of really funny moments here, legitimately funny moments, the banter, and how they just kind of, bounce off of each other, right? And how they react to each other. Montuta Yupi, twice he kind of, sees his counterparts, his associates, I suppose, fellow royal guards, in really specific states. He walks in on FILMBuFF having his moment, his breakdown, right? His internal struggle, titanic internal struggle at that. And then, you see that he's just kind of chilling there once again. And he sees in the distance Neferpito just being really quite annoyed. You see that she's kind of worked herself up, right? At the thought of potentially getting to face this challenger, right? Moro, because she is quite impressed. She is, right? But she knows she cannot leave. So, it's frustrating for someone like Neferpito. And you see that she's actually quite excited about the prospect of someone like Moro, right, actually coming to the palace at some point, right? Maybe they'll come to me, and then maybe I'll get to have a bit of fun. You'll have your fun, Neferpito, you'll have your fun. But yeah, you see, as that breakthrough is happening, right, actively about to happen here, openly, he essentially deludes himself, right, legitimately deludes himself, or uses this, coping mechanism essentially to deal with this potential worldview breaking idea. You see that he gets a peek of it, right? But he shuts that book almost immediately because it's a slippery slope. It is, because he knows he would have to start questioning everything, right? His place in the world, his role, right? The purpose of his existence, and all of that, this idea of being born as the one true almighty being, the almighty king. But, I'm really quite excited to see how FILMBuFF is going to continue to handle this metamorphosis, because it is going to continue. It is. And how he's going to reconcile this idea of, okay, the king that he's born to serve is not this ideal, one true king. But yeah, in terms of him actually, finding out the name, his actual name, that is Medwem, I don't know, man. I know there's a handful of characters that actually know the name, but is there going to be any situation that, he could possibly get a name out of them, or they might share his name? I don't know. But yeah, speaking of his name, his true name, yeah, and regrets and all of that, at some point he is going to think about his, late mother, right? And how he treated her. I touched up on this a long time ago, and I believe I said, he'll regret it. At some point he is going to regret those actions, right? He's already showing that he regrets some of his actions. And I feel that at some point, in this introspection phase of his, he is going to think of that. But let's kind of shift the focus to the extermination squad, right? You see that both Killua and Ikalgo have joined up, and, as expected, of course, they took to Ikalgo. So, they don't really need to show us them actually meeting, right? It's just something you kind of understand. But let's look at the key components of the plan that's being put together here, right? So first of all, they're going to be using Nov Sensei's apartment complex, and 7 of them are going to infiltrate the palace, right? You've got Knuckles, Shoot, Gon, Killua, Melioran, Ikalgo, and Moro. And then, a few seconds after them, the chairman is going to enter from beyond Pito's End. How about that, eh? Now, the immediate thought is, okay, did Nov Sensei secretly have another, aspect to his ability? Could he establish a sky portal, something like that? Because, if you're thinking about beyond Pito's End, it just really truly feels like it's got to be something from above. So see, this right here is a case of the unknown for us, the audience, right? How exactly he plans on entering, from beyond Pito's End. I don't know. Let's see if his associate, his acquaintance is going to be playing a part as well, right? I mentioned it earlier in the discussion, he's infiltrated before, so he might be employing a similar strategy once again, maybe alongside the chairman, right? And of course, I'm speaking of someone like Zeno, right? The main contender for this acquaintance. And apparently Gon, Killua, and Ikalgo are going to go in first. So, at this point, you have to start thinking about Ikalgo's ability, right? How exactly are they going to be using that? And then, of course, Melioran is going to be playing a massive part from the sounds of it as well, right? And his ability. Now, in terms of Gon's concern for Palm, it's not surprising, is it? It's just in Gon's nature. But I thought Killua really handled that, right? He knew, this is not the time to deviate. This is not the time to really kind of give into Gon's, feelings, even though, it's understandable. Killua understands that, he's concerned, he's worried about Palm at this point, but, he reminds him, you've got to respect her resolve as well, much like Shu states as well. She understood the stakes and she accepted those stakes. Now, the interesting thing is there's no mention of Palm at all on the other side, right? I've got half the episode, more than half the episode that's, inside of the palace, no mention of Palm. So that's really quite puzzling, right? Either it's something that's kind of going on in the background. Maybe they'll actually, speak on the matter, maybe in the next episode or the episode after that, but they didn't even bring it up, that they caught someone or they came across someone. But yeah, at this point, they're on the brink of this encounter, this monumental and historic encounter at that, perhaps. And yeah, it feels like, I'll be there in the next few episodes, perhaps. But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. Incredible episode. It's a standout episode. So if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or timer-based full length or full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page and possibly or potentially supporting the channel as well. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.